order. And first of all, welcome everyone for coming. And I will first start off with introducing our board and our guests. At the very end there is Judy Hutton. And then we have Tom Frangos. And next is Tom Garreau from CMA. He is the controller at CMA, our management company. Lanier Coulter, our legal counsel. Buddy Harrell. Lee Cope from WJE Engineering. Kevin Cullen. I'm Rebecca Shaw. And Ziggy Perlowski. And Terry Neiman. And at the front here we have Wes and Jason Gillette from United Restoration, Brad Teal from United Restoration, Bryce McQueen from WJE, and in the audience we have Scott Drake, who is our newly elected city councilor. So first of all, we're going to start the meeting with Buddy discussing our property values in Decatur and condo values in particular. We will have a presentation by Lee Cope and Kevin on the problems in the building and how we plan to fix them. Buddy and Tom Garreau will then speak about the lending process, and we will distribute information on costs per unit later in the presentations. Lanier will elaborate on our balloting and voting process. And we can't tell you often enough how important voting is going to be, as a no vote will cause the building's continued deterioration. Please hold all questions till the end, when Terry Neiman will facilitate our question and answer session. And a little bit of history about how we got here. The building was completed in early 2005, and the problem started soon after. We filed a lawsuit in 2009. Testing and extensive engineering reports on both building and garage were completed for that lawsuit, and they have been very helpful in repairing the bids and the communications with homeowners. We settled the lawsuit in 2012, and soon after began the process to ascertain the best course of action to permanently fix the building. We can all agree that the building must be fixed, and to make the process as efficient as possible, we formed 3 committees: Repair, Finance, and Communication. The Repair Committee has looked at the best course of action and then worked extensively with WJE to prepare the documents for the bid process. The bid document was so that all the bids could be compared equally, so we were comparing apples to apples. The Finance Committee began researching options for paying for the work, and they have worked with Tom and Lanier to that end. Communication Committee worked to make sure all of the information necessary to make an informed decision was distributed to all homeowners. And we have given this information out at board meetings, by constant contact, in the packets that were delivered recently to the mail, and notices on the bulletin boards. We received the preliminary bids late in February. We spent from 9 a.m. to 5:30 one day interviewing all 3 companies that put in bids, and every board member now knows a lot about stucco. We received revised bids and chose the winning bid first week of March, which brings us to tonight. So without further ado, I would like to just say one more thing before I turn over to Buddy. And in the question and answers tonight, we will not be answering questions about the lawsuit. So thank you very much. Buddy?
Okay, we started out when we were when we first started looking at this after our settlement of our lawsuit last year, we felt one of the major considerations in the decision-making process had to do with property values. we felt that we needed to be able to look each of you in the eye and tell you that we believe money spent on repairing the property is going to be recouped by an increase in the home values. We knew all of this was going on at a time that there were a lot of things going on in the real estate market. We had a nationwide recession going. We had property values in Atlanta, Atlanta being one of the hardest hit cities in the country as far as real estate property. But in Decatur, we were kind of in a unique situation. Decatur property values had held up pretty well and had not seen the same decreases that Atlanta and proper and other areas of the country had. So we knew our property values at Decatur Renaissance were falling quite rapidly, especially beginning in around 2009, 2010 time frame. Also, we began to feel that property values had not rebounded as fast at Decatur Renaissance or as much as others in the area. So we began to try to figure out how much of the cause and effect is because of our problems with the building and how much of it is just related to real estate in general. So the first thing we did was performed an analysis of county tax property records, and we came up with some fairly interesting things that that caused us to look at things, in more detail. But what we found was that we looked initially at only three complexes. We looked at our building, Decatur Renaissance. We looked at the Artisan. We looked at Town Square, and we looked at 1 and 2 bedroom units. And what we found is that initially, from 2005 to about 2007, everything was going along fairly evenly. And in 2007, you see this line here. Actually, the Decatur Renaissance 2 bedrooms went up faster in value than any of the other property in the Decatur area, at least as far as property tax values go. So, here we have roughly an 8% increase, and that held up through 2010, and then it began a fairly rapid decrease down to the point where now it appears to be around 31 or 32% below what it started out. This line here represents zero change one way or the other. So if it stayed on this line, that meant a year-over-year change didn't occur in your property values. We see here, this is Decatur Renaissance 1 bedroom. Went up a little bit, then it started going down, went down further, and then in 2011, here's where it goes. On the other hand, the other properties around, when you look at, this would be Artisan 1 bedroom, for example. This would be Town Square 2 bedroom, and this would be Artisan 2 bedroom, and looks like Town Square 1 bedroom. So all of this, said, well, that's very interesting, but we had some concerns about how accurately the county property tax records really reflected what was going on. So what we did is we engaged a company that's in the real estate contracting and property appraisal business. The name of the company is Property Valuation Services, to come in and give us an independent viewpoint of what was going on. And they did about a 2 to 3 week study of primarily the Decatur mid-rise condominium market. And they expanded it, and we looked at all of the condominiums in the area. So we added the Claremont, which is only 2 bedroom units. So when we compare units, they'll be left out of the 1 bedroom sales. And we added 335 West Ponce to the mix. And we didn't look at just a limited sample, but they looked at all sales that have occurred since 2005. And some of their findings were, you know, this is just kind of a general statement, but the city of Decatur has been an example of a community that can weather the storm. Overall, property tax values have held quite well in the Decatur area. And values, excluding Decatur Renaissance, have held fairly constant. We had a slight drop in the 2009-2011 period, but for the most part, those the values have fully recovered. And furthermore, they found that issues which have plagued Decatur Renaissance have caused one-bedroom units to lose 44% of their value, while two-bedroom units have lost 31%. So here are that similar slides to what we looked at before, but these are based on actual sales rather than property tax values. So we see starting here in 2005, Town Square went up significantly up till 2009 and then kind of dropped off, but they dropped off to about a 10% decrease over what they had started out. But now they're back up and in fact are higher than what they were you know, when we first started looking at it in 2005. Artisan went up and they dropped off a little bit beginning in 2008. But they've recovered. They showed a little bit of a decrease last year, but they're still up within 10% of what the original sales price were. And then this is our building. This is Decatur Renaissance, and again, these are one bedroom, but it shows shows it going down here below 50%. Now it's recovered a little bit to up around 44% decrease in value. So this is the one bedroom picture. This is what the two-bedroom looks like. It's a little bit more convoluted slide than the other, but still we see this is the Claremont two-bedroom units, and the Claremont is probably the highest priced units around. They're running somewhere around $500,000 in purchase price. But here we see this is the 335 West Ponce. This is Artisan two-bedroom. This is Town Square two-bedroom, and this is the Decatur Renaissance two-bedroom. So all these numbers seem to somewhat agree with each other. The property values that are in the DeKalb County Tax Digest, as well as what the real estate appraisal company found out. So what their findings and conclusions were is that if the structural issues that currently exist at Decatur Renaissance are not corrected in a timely manner, the development can not only experience additional physical damage, but values could continue to decline. And as kind of as a side note, but related to that, they found that two-bedroom sales from a unit's sales perspective appear to be lagging by roughly 50% of what is taking place outside the development. And that's not in terms of price, but that's in terms of unit sales. Roughly twice as many units are being offered for sale and are being sold in other communities as to what we're seeing here at Decatur Renaissance. So that is basically all I have on the property values.
Now we'll hear from Lee Cope with a short presentation.
I hate talking in microphones, but here we go. Again, my name is Lee Cope. I'm a structural engineer with Wisciani Elstner. I'm not going to bore you to death who I am and what we do, but I do want to just introduce myself real briefly. Our firm, we specialize in solving building problems, anything from structural collapses, material problems, to water leakage, to facade problems. We don't really design new buildings. We solve existing problems in buildings. So we've been around for approximately since 1956, so we've been around for a while. We've got 20 different offices throughout the country. And myself and then Bryce, who's been helping me with this project, we're here in our Duluth office. I've worked with Wisciani since 1999, so I'm getting close to 14 years of doing this stuff. And what I do, while I'm a structural engineer, I have done or performed structural investigations in the past, but my niche is mostly looking at building facades, whether it's, from water leakage. I've done a lot of stucco work, so this has been a sort of a natural fit for me on this project. So that's enough about me. But what I want to do today, or this afternoon, is just briefly go through my experiences with Decatur Renaissance, what we've done and what we've seen, and what are the problems that are occurring, and how we plan on addressing the problems. The first thing is, why do you want to perform the facade rehabilitation work? Well, for me, I haven't talked to anybody other than the board members, but I would think it's really, you want to do this work not outside of the financial part. Is really you're tired of a leaky building. You want to fix. You want to come home to a building that you don't have to worry about water stains around windows or floors or whatever. So that's my main thing is here is, how are we going to stop the moisture from getting into the building? When we did our investigation starting off back in 2008, 2009, one of the things that we did was an interior survey. And what that means is we picked 2 floors. This is an example of our field sheet from the 3rd floor. And I know it's real messy, but for the main thing here, you can see sort of the outline of the building. And all this red stuff, like right here in the middle, that's the unit number. Some of these units, like this one, we didn't get into. Some of these we didn't get into. But you can pretty much see every unit that we walked in, we saw signs of water damage or water staining around the perimeter of the building. And where we saw these things from, we saw staining at you might want to cut the lights down just a little bit, maybe. Maybe just dim one or two. But what we saw some staining, a lot of staining along the window jambs, at the sills of the windows. We saw some damage at the window heads. We saw some staining at the baseboards in the units. And then also during our investigation of water testing, sometimes we remove the drywall so we can sort of see how water's coming in. But this just shows real quick a little bit of water underneath the studs track for the wall. But you can also see some of the corrosion that's forming on the base. While this is pretty minor, if it continues, it could become a problem. But I just wanted to show real quickly there is other stuff going on behind the wall that you can't see readily. But while this is more of an extreme case, I understand that this is, every unit doesn't look like this. But I just wanted to go through real quick just to showing that, we walked through and we mentioned, like here, this was we put codes J for a jam, H for a head. So we noted where we saw this leakage around the perimeter of the building. And from doing the work in Atlanta, this is probably the most leakage I've ever seen in a building when you're really looking at it, looking at stuff around windows and the base of walls and so forth. So another thing, the other reason why you want to perform the work is if you don't perform the work, or if you don't if you don't stop water from getting into the building, you're going to start having some structural damage. Your structural system for your condo is not concrete frame or steel frame. It's metal studs with a concrete deck or a concrete slab. So if your studs are very important, you don't want those to start corroding, because if you get into a lot of corroded studs, you're going to have a lot bigger of a problem on your hands. Also, things are going to continue to rot. Things are going to continue to decay. You potentially have a mold problem down the road. Currently, in our investigation, when we were working with the attorneys and so forth, they were concerned with potential mold in the building, so they brought in a mold expert. Samples were removed, the drywall was removed, samples were taken, and the results from that survey at the time was mold is not an issue. But obviously, as water continues to occur and things that continue to happen, mold is a potential problem down the road. And so with those things, obviously, if you just don't solve the problem, problems are going to get more significant down the road. Costs are going to get more significant down the road. So that, to me, is another reason why I think it's a good idea to perform the repairs to the facade. Before I get into sort of what we did or what's causing the leaks, what I want to do real briefly is just summarize, let you guys understand what the wall is constructed out of. You've got interior drywall. You can see that from your living room, from your bedroom. Then you've got a stud space where your insulation is. Then you have your exterior sheathing on the outside of the wall. Stucco, it is a material that it cracks. There's voids occur in the wall. So it's intended to allow water to get through. But so if water gets through, you better have a weather-resistant barrier back here that keeps water from getting inside. You also should have proper flashings in your wall system, to where as water travels down the cavity, it can weep out like it does, like we show here as rain's hitting it, water's coming down the cavity, it hits the flashings, and then it weeps out. That's what you want in your building. I'm going to show you what you currently have. But so you start thinking, how is water getting into the units? Well, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to have some cracks, you're going to have some voids. Water is intended to get back behind it. So the water gets through cracks, it gets through filled sealants, unsealed wall penetrations. Once water is behind the stucco, as long as you have a proper weather barrier behind it, water will travel down and weep out at the flashings like we showed in the other picture. So you have to, so if you have poor means of wall drainage, or if you have poor installation of weather-resistant barrier, or if you have poor flashings, you're going to have leakage into the building, and that's what's happening. You're getting water's coming through cracks, it's coming through failed sealants, it's coming through unsealed wall penetrations. Once water's behind the stucco, then there's poor lapse in your weather barrier, there's poor flashings, and we'll show some examples, but that's how water is getting into your units. Here's a picture of a elevation that we did when we were doing our investigation. A lot of times when we start doing an investigation, we're just trying to figure out, we know things crack, but we want to know where the cracks are occurring or why they're occurring and all that kind of stuff. For this building, it became pretty easily to figure it out, because with stucco, I don't think everybody's an expert stucco, but if you make it just simple terms, if you think of a sidewalk, when you walk down a sidewalk, you've got a sidewalk of concrete with what's 3 feet wide. So pretty much every 3 feet you have a little joint cut there in your stucco, or a little joint in your concrete sidewalk, and those joints are called control joints. They allow the concrete to crack, so you're not having cracks all out in the middle of the panel. Where in stucco, you're supposed to have control joints, which the control joints for the stucco is a little different than the slab, or the sidewalk, but you should have joints separating these different panels to sort of compartmentalize each panel to help limit cracking. Here at Decatur Renaissance, the only joint here we have this little blue line indicates location of joint and stucco. You only have one here on this whole elevation. You should have them between the windows. So what happens is, if you don't have joints, as stucco starts expanding and contracting, it's going to create its own joints, and that's what it's had. That's what's happened. So now you've got cracks all over the place, and just keep in mind these cracks are shown with me on the ground looking up with a pair of binoculars. So I was not close up to this wall. If I was up close, I would see a lot more cracks than what's shown right here. So, and this is just examples of what a crack would look like. From walking, these photographs were taken back in 2009, 2010. Just from briefly walking around the property lately, some of the cracks are a lot bigger than they are than what we show here. But that's just examples of showing how water, if water's coming down this facade, if water gets in the crack, it's behind the stucco. Also, you've got filled sealant joints. Here's a sealant around a window. You've got the raveled edge here. You can see where water can get in here. This is a balcony slab edge. Every unit has a balcony. That balcony extends out, and the base of the stucco wall has sealant around it. A lot of those sealants are starting to fail. So if those fail, again, water can get behind the stucco. Dryer vents. Dryer vents are all over the place out over on Decatur Renaissance. From this thing, all this is this one is just a piece of plastic painted, and you see your screws here. This one actually had screws. Some of them only have one. But you can see the open joint around the perimeter of this vent. Those open joints allows water to get behind the stucco. And if you had a proper weather barrier or proper flashings, it wouldn't matter, because it's going to keep things dry. It's going to drain out. The problem we have with Decatur Renaissance is we don't have those means for water to get out like they should. Here's a picture of a window head right here. This is the only place on this building that water can get out once it gets in, is at the window heads. looking at a close-up picture here, this little open gap. This is a piece of this is actually a piece of vinyl, but it's sort of shaped like this little L shape. So what the intention is if water traveling behind the stucco, when it hits this, it weeps out, just like that picture I showed earlier, that little demonstration. The bad thing with stucco is this L-shaped piece of vinyl right here, it just stops. It doesn't extend. It doesn't have a little dam on the end of it, so water that's traveling down the wall hits it and pushes it out. Any water that hits this thing now can roll over, and not only, while some can come out, some of the water also stays in the cavity behind the stucco and just stays in there. The other thing is, while it allows some water to get out, it also allows water to get in, because again, there's no end on this piece of flashing here. And then at the base of walls, you've got a sealant joint. There's no way for water to get out of this system once water's behind the stucco. So we've got water behind the stucco, we've got poor flashings, or we have a lack of flashings to get water out of the stucco. And so you're going to have problems. If water can't get out once it gets in, you're going to have problems. You're really going to have problems when you have a weather barrier system. When we did some water testing here, we've got a leak to occur. We came in and cut this stucco out, and this is what we saw behind it. We've got felt paper, which is just is real thin paper, but it's a waterproofing material, weather barrier. This is your exterior sheathing. You remember you had your interior sheathing that you can see from your units. You've got your metal studs, and then you've got your DENS glass. That's your DENS glass. So this open gap right here around this balcony slab edge is just a direct path for water to get into your unit. Also, not only is that a problem, as water is traveling down here, since this weather barrier, since this felt is not properly lapped, water can also get behind the felt right here. And once it's behind the felt, now the water is directly on that DENS glass or your exterior sheathing, and your studs are just right there on the other side of that yellow board. Other things, just to show some pictures. This is your dryer vent after a piece of the dryer or the dryer vent cover was removed. This felt just comes up and butts to it. You can actually see it. It's hard to see here, but this is a yellow portion of that DENS glass board. There's no flashing or nothing that's tying this system to that cover. So as water comes down behind the wall, hits this little vent, it hits it, and it's able to get behind this felt paper here again. Then it's directly on your DENS glass sheathing. Same way here. Here's your stucco's removed. Here's that little flashing at the base. Actually, this one's been caught because I guess they thought they were stopping the problem. So, but you can see here how messed up this one was, because the flashing is set on top of this felt paper. Here's my pencil stuck behind it. Proper installation would have this sitting on top of that. So as water is traveling behind the stucco, it's able to run behind this piece of flashing here, and then it's right in at your window head. It's your problem. And just other pictures here. Some pictures of the windows. This is water has removed. We've removed the stucco at this bottom of this below this window. You can see how just degraded this felt paper has become. It's degrading the DENS glass at the base of the wall, because all the water flows downhill, and it's going to collect at the base. And I'd imagine the guys on the first floor is probably getting more water than the guys on the upper floors, because everything's going down. But the other thing around this windows too is just, again, the felt paper. You can see there's no lap here. So again, as water's coming down behind the stucco, as my pencil is showing, water can get behind this weather barrier, this felt paper. Luckily for us, when we were doing our investigation, the other side was doing their investigation too. And when part of their investigation was they was going to remove a big part of the stucco and see what's going on. Well, this is what they saw when they removed everything down to that DENS glass. So your metal studs are just on the opposite side of this. From this, when you see new DENS glass installed, it's bright yellow. There's no damage to it. It's just perfect yellow. All this black stuff here is just evidence of water that's gotten behind this felt paper that's came in from the stucco and so forth. And what you've got here, you see all your vents. There's no, look at this vent here. You've got your dryer vents coming out of this one. You've got two other holes on either side of it. So what you really had on your building is you had your felt paper covering it and your stucco on top. So from the outside it looks great, but what's behind it was terrible, which is allowing water to come in. The other thing is all of your joints in your dense glass is currently wide open. So these boards come in 4 feet by 8 feet sections for the most part, and they just stack on top of each other like you'd see just on a wood, plywood construction on the outside of a house or something. But all these joints are wide open, and from this project, what we also saw, there was so much poor quality control that, when you put the dense glass, you put your felt, it's really hard to see where the studs are because you can't. It's covered up. You can't see your screws anymore. So what the contractor did, and what a lot of contractors do because they don't really know any better, is they start, when they put their metal lath up to support your stucco, that's the little metal stuff that you saw in some of these pictures here, like right here, this metal here, it's screwed in, and then the stucco's placed, and that's how the stucco's held up on the wall. But the way they find their screws or studs is they just start screwing. Once they hit a stud, then they can sort of try to keep it going upwards, but they'll miss every now and then. So what we have at Decatur Renaissance, not only do we have all the open joints, we also have all these unsealed screw holes just all over the place. So as water gets behind your stucco, I hope you can understand how water gets behind your felt. And then once water gets behind the felt, you can see all the avenues for water to get into your building, and that's what's happening. So how are we fixing it? Well, what we would like to do is solve the problem. We want to have a long-term fix. We don't want to deal with this in 3 years because the Band-Aid fix has wore off. So to do that, what we've recommended to the board and what we've priced out and got pricing from these contractors is we were going to remove the stucco. We're going to remove the existing weather barrier, the felt paper. We're going to remove that exterior sheathing. We're going to move everything down to the studs. We're going to put new dense glass up on the wall. We're going to seal, once we put the new dense glass up, we're going to reflash around all these windows to make sure that's a watertight joint around the perimeter of the window. Once that's installed, we're going to seal the joints in the exterior sheathing. We're going to put a weather barrier over that. And instead of going with a felt paper, what we would like to do is they've got better ones than that, where you can spray it and it's fully adhered, fully applied to where you don't have to worry about water getting behind it because it can't, because it's stuck glued to the sheathing. Once the weather barrier is installed, we'd put a layer of felt, and then we'd put our lath, and then we'd put our stucco on top of that. So if water ever does get behind our stucco, it can't get into the building. It's just going to come down and weep out. Because instead of, as currently you have no way for water to get out, we're going to have flashing at the base of the wall. And we're also going to have flashing at every floor line. We're going to flash the dryer vents. We're going to install flashing around the balcony slab edges. Our goal is to have a watertight building before your stucco is ever put on. And to confirm that, we're going to do water testing. Once we're going to put a spray rack, we're going to water test the facade. And once we see no evidence of water leakage, after we'll just spray the wall for an hour. After no leakage occurs, then the contractors will be turned loose to put stucco on the wall. After stucco is installed on the wall, then you have to put your finish on to make sure we have a good quality stucco. We are going to be testing the stucco to make sure we have good quality stuff. But the stucco has to sit there for 20 or 30 days to make sure it fully cures out before we put the finish. If there's cracks in the wall, we're going to fix it. If there's a really cracked up wall, it's going to get taken out and removed. We're going to deal with the issues before we move the scaffold away from the building. So that's how we plan on handling. That's sort of what's going on with the facade, and that's how we're planning on handling with it. And then real quickly, just the garage. As you know, the garage sits underneath the building. And the question would be, why would you perform these repairs? You really don't see it. You do park in it, but in backing up just a little bit, from doing the repair work investigation, from what we understood was the HOA is responsible for things that were repaired or added to the garage during the construction of the building. So what we're doing is we're looking at those items. We're not looking at the whole entire garage. But the things that we're about to review I think it's very important to fix because there are safety and structural concerns that you've got going on in your building right now. The building sits on top of the garage. And again, if the work is not performed, additional structural damage is going to continue to occur. You're going to have unsafe conditions, and costs are significantly going to start going up more. But the issues that we have, the main issues, you can walk through the garage and see this stuff yourself. There's expansion joints in this garage. The stuff that's the expansion joints underneath the footprint of your building, all they did, the designer told the contractor to do, was to put these metal plates underneath to lock that building together so it can't expand and contract. So they've locked them together. When you go out and look at it, the building sits on top of these things. You don't want these things ripping apart because it's going to cause, you don't want your building to start moving open. You don't have these joints in your building. So it's very important to keep this stuff in a good condition. On top, all they did was remove the old gland that was in the expansion joint because these should be waterproofed. They just removed it and just patched it full of concrete, and as you can see, it's all spalled up, and you can walk out there and see this yourself. Just loose concrete all over the place. And even on a good rainy day, you can walk underneath these things and just probably take a nice little shower if you or cool off, whatever, on a hot day. But what happens, all this water has poured through this joint. It came down. It's starting to corrode these metal plates, and it's also allowing water to interact with all the reinforcing bars that's in your concrete beams. So as water comes in contact with steel, it starts corroding. As corrosion starts occurring, that corrosion starts building up, and that's what's causing some spalls and some exposed rebar, stuff like that, along these expansion joints. This is just a close-up picture of some of these plates that they've strapped that garage together. And as you can see, some are in pretty good shape. Most of these are in bad. But we've gone through and we're going to remove the ones that are severely corroded. We're going to replace with new. The ones that are not severely corroded, we're not going to fix it if it's not broken. But one thing we are going to do is we're going to stop water from getting through that joint. We're going to fix that concrete. We're going to make it waterproof. And then we're going to clean these and paint the ones that we can salvage. We don't want to, if it's broke, we don't want to, if it's not broke, we don't want to fix it. The other thing is there's a steel beam down there on the bottom level of the garage. And this, what happened here, this, as you walk down this garage, and I guess it's going this way because this picture was looking the other way. But as you go around the garage, there's big concrete walls. What they did is they removed that wall so you can have traffic flowing through and out of this area, and they put this big steel beam up. Well, this steel beam consists of steel members strapped together with bolts and nuts and all that kind of stuff. Well, all this water that's came down in every one of these joints, it started to corrode all kind of things. You've got a bunch of corrosion going on. A lot of these bolts, some of these have failed. You've got a lot of welds going on there. So part of their fix was to clean this material, remove some of the bad corrosion in the steel, put new steel back, repaint it, recoat it. But the main thing is to keep water from coming back at this place. And then the other thing is, this is just a picture of. And there's a lot of spalling going on them. Not a whole lot, but there are some localized locations where you've got concrete spalls or loose concrete, and you've got exposed reinforcing bars. Here's one right here. With this, you can see the big loose section right here. If you hit that with a hammer, it all come out, and all your rebar would be exposed. But the reason you want to fix these things is because in concrete, that's what keeps it all together, and that's what gives the concrete strength and tension. A couple of years ago, we got a call from Amy, and actually a tire had actually punctured through one of these slabs here. I don't know if y'all remember that or not, but that was. So we wound up, chipping that out, fixing all that loose concrete, putting in new reinforcing bars in there, and patching that. But there is a couple of locations where this kind of condition still occurs. So again, that's a safety issue and why you want to fix it. And so how are we going to fix the garage? Again, we're going to repair cracked and loose concrete throughout the parking garage. We're going to repair and waterproof the expansion joints. And wherever there's steel members, we're going to clean it. We're going to paint them. We're going to keep them from where they don't continue to rust. And as long as we protect them, as long as we keep water from getting back to them, we should be in good shape. Who will do the work? As they mentioned, we put together a set of construction documents. We bid that out, and the low bidder, after very close bid, very competitive bid, the low bidder again was United Restorations. And just a little bit about them. They were formed in 2006. They came from another company here in Atlanta. Very good bunch of guys. They've got offices in Atlanta, New Orleans, Houston, and San Antonio. And Personally, I've worked with them on 3 projects. I've worked with them on the Metropolis condominium in Midtown. I've worked with them on the Dakota condos in Midtown, and I've also worked with them on a condo in Sandy Springs. So those are 3 condos that I've worked with these guys on. And just a little bit about their history, not too much, but you know, they for the restoration rehab work, you know, $13.6 million for a year worth of work is a nice size firm. They're not like a big general construction company that's building new buildings all over the place, but you know, they're specialized guys that specialize in solving these types of problems. And so that's all I've got for my presentation.
I guess we could put the light back on. Thank you, Lee. I had planned on jumping in there a few times, but I believe he did a very good job, and I didn't have anything to add. I do want to explain a little bit about what we've been doing. We started a year ago with a repair committee, and we were tasked with coming up with the best plan to fix the building. On the repair committee was myself, Buddy Harold, Tom Frangos, Marvin Bond, Bill Stewart, Laura Cullen, Hans Prauser, and Howard Hicks. That's 4 engineers, an architect, and a contractor. And we spent a lot of time going over the original investigation done by WJE. We've looked at all the reports, and we discussed the many different possibilities on the best way to fix the building. We came down to about 3 that were possible. One of them was the cheapest one that we looked at was the elastomeric coating paint. The second one was just cutting out around the windows and repairing that because that's the worst problem. And the third one was the one we just discussed, which was fixing the entire building. We asked WJE to get estimates on those 3 possibilities. When the estimates came back, we had done more extensive studying individually and then together on elastomeric coating paint, and we decided it wasn't for this project. Elastomeric coating is mainly for, well, Lee called it a Band-Aid, but it's for a building that has very minor problems. The elastomeric coat can bridge a hairline crack. We don't have hairline cracks. We have major cracks. The elastomeric coating would not fix anything behind it. We'd still have all the problems that you just saw. So we eliminated the elastomeric coating as a fix. The other option, cutting around the windows and fixing that, the bids came back on that almost as with the same cost as the bid to do the entire building. So we decided to do the entire building. We made that suggestion to the board, and then the board took over from there. And we authorized WJE to create the drawings, the scope of work, and the bid documents. And we sent out the bids to the 3 bidders that were recommended by WJE, who we thought were quality or high quality contractors in the area. We met with the contractors, spent the whole day with them, and got to know them and their company and their plans on fixing the building and how to do it. And then we got the final bids back, and looking at the final bids, we had the lowest bidder for the garage and the lowest bidder for the fix the facade, happened to be the same company. When it also made sense that they were one company and could do both of them at the same time, and they were the lowest bidder for both of them. We then made a decision that it was going to be United Restoration. We have a lot of information on United Restoration. We have these 2 booklets. One of them is a booklet about United Restoration. The other one is a booklet about how they are going to do the repair of the building. Amy has these in her office. I'm not going to go into them now. Anybody who's interested in looking at them, just go down to Amy's office and you can take a look at them there. I've been asked to give you a brief overview on how, once we start the construction, it's going to affect all of us. It's going to take 1 year. Scaffolding will be up in front of your unit for 5 months. during that 5 months, you will not be able to use your balcony. We have been asked, and we are trying to work it out, that the pool area will not be closed during the scaffolding. They'll do other areas during the summer and not do the pool area. That's the plan right now. When it comes to the garage, we will have to move cars. We will have to change people's parking spaces, and we may even have to close some of the pathways that the cars take. But we have plenty of parking spaces. We don't feel like that's going to be a big issue. That's all I have on that, and I'm going to pass it over to Buddy, and he's going to discuss the loan process.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the financing options. Last summer, I believe it was, Kevin, correct me, but we got estimates, preliminary estimate of somewhere in the neighborhood of excess of $2 million to do the fix. This was before we had gone out and solicited formal bids from all the companies. But this was okay. So this was a collaboration, I believe, between WJE and I believe you guys helped do that preliminary estimate, didn't you? Yeah. So anyway, when we did that and we came up with a number of in excess of $2 million, we made the decision that a special assessment was not a viable option for us and would be impractical for a majority of homeowners. So we began working with Tom Giroux, and Tom, anytime you want to step in here and correct anything I say, feel free to do it. But in September of last year, we began working with Tom to help us come up with possible financing options for the building. As explained, Tom is control of CMA, and he has experience in assisting condo communities such as our own in seeking financing in similar circumstances. And after a couple of meetings with Tom, we began to have some hopes that perhaps bank financing might be a feasible option for us. In February, after receiving our construction bids, a board resolution was passed giving Tom permission to seek pre-qualification of DRC for bank financing of our project. Discussions and applications are currently underway and being discussed with SunTrust and Mutual of Omaha. And Tom, you talked about possibly a third. Is there somebody else that we are talking to also?
No, we're not talking to a third bank at this point.
Okay, okay. So that's what we're going. That's what we're doing, and a little bit how this works. It's really a 10-year loan. The first year is interest only. It works like a construction loan. We would have drawdown as we make progress on the building, and we would only pay interest on that money that we have drawn down from the bank. So, and we have already budgeted for those interest payments for this year. So that's in this year's budget. We passed a budget that included those interest payments. And at this point in time, we're anticipating that those interest payments will actually be less than what we had budgeted for. So the good news is that no additional money is going to be required for this year. We anticipate that Phase 2 payments, and Phase 2 is actually where we take the money that was borrowed during the construction phase. If that winds up being will wind up being in excess of $2 million. So when the construction is completed, we'll know how much that is. But what we plan to do is begin payment through an increase in the homeowners association dues in January of 2014, and the amount of the increase in the dues is designed to cover what our required payment to the bank is going to be. We're looking at a 4.5% interest rate to the bank, or possibly lower, Tom informs me. But one of the things that we're doing is planning a 3% uplift. We've been advised that during the process there will be probably an increased number of delinquencies. So the plan is to slightly increase the amount of homeowners association dues to incorporate that 3% uplift into the rate. So what we would be is increasing homeowners association dues for a 9-year period. An option would be an upfront payment. If you're in a financial position or desire to just get it out of the way, we've calculated how much that would be for a one-time upfront payment. If you sell your unit over the course of that 9 years, you can pay off your share of that loan at that point in time. And also, Tom has been discussing with us that during one designated month each year, we could have a homeowner might pay off the remaining balance of the loan. This would be if you fell into some money and felt like you wanted to get this out of the way, get rid of the interest payments, be able to just be free and clear of it. And so when that occurs, we would just do it 1 month a year. And if there were 10 homeowners that decided they wanted to pay off during that month, or however many it is, then the bank would do what's called a recast of the loan. And everybody's loan payment would stay the same, but the amount that the association would pay to the bank would decrease by the rate of the amount that the homeowners had paid off during that period of time. So those are the 4 homeowners payoff options that we're currently discussing. And so how did we come up with the final number? The estimate for United Restoration's share is $2,491,550. We would be paying WJE $200,000 to oversee construction, make sure we don't get into the same problem again that we got into with the original building. We've built in a 10% contingency, and this is in case something comes up, if we find there are a large number of windows that need to be replaced or some other unforeseen circumstance. We've got some money in there to cover it. We have closing costs, so a total of $2,960,000, 705. And we've got $600,000 in the bank that Ziggy is being a very good steward of for us here. And we also have $100,000 that we anticipate pulling out of the Master Association reserves, the Master Association being the retail space that we have. So we would be taking $100,000 from that. So $700,000 from the $2,960,000 leaves a balance of $2,260,705 that we're seeking to borrow from the bank. So that's kind of the detail of what makes up the loan. And originally we had talked about, we want to look at this as, okay, what is the implication of it if you're looking at your home as an investment? We have a loan of $2,260,000 at 4.5% for 9 years. We're going to be paying $25,495 per month to the lending institution to borrow this money. There will be an uplift of 3%, which brings it up to $26,259 that we'll have to pay to the bank. So the average homeowner association fee will increase $156.31. 1 bedroom is going to be less. 2 bedrooms will be more. And again, it'll be allocated based on square footage. And we are going to be making individual worksheets available to everybody that shows specifically what their units, what the allocation would be to each individual unit. And finally, I guess getting back to the investment proposition, in 2005, 2006, a typical one-bedroom Decatur Renaissance condominium sold for $170,000. We showed earlier that right now we're estimating there's been a 44% loss in value, which is a total of $74,800. If we look in kind of a sneak at the, I guess, worksheet that's coming out here, but if we look at the typical cost of repair that a one-bedroom unit would be facing would be $10,571 if paid up front. So that's a return of 708%. I mean, you're getting, we feel very strongly that once these repairs are made, that the value of the units within DRC are going to recover pretty much to the original purchase price. Now, it might not happen immediately. It might take 2 years, but we think it will recover very quickly. I feel that because I feel that Decatur is a very good community. Other communities are seeing their property values starting to increase, starting to recover from the recession, and there's no reason to think that DRC won't either with the proper repairs. A two-bedroom sold for $265,000. 31% loss of value means you've lost $82,150, and the typical cost of repair for the two-bedroom unit is a little over $17,000, and that's a return of $472 if the value returns to its original purchase price. So I think that's me.
Okay.
About the only thing I can add to your discussion is the interest cost is 4.5%. The delinquency upcharge is 3%. What that is designed to do is to cover people who may not be able to make their payments, and the association has to make up that shortfall that's actually passed on directly to each individual owner through that charge. If you add the two together, your actual borrowing cost is 7.5%. And that might induce some of the owners on the property to look at their available cash sources and decide they don't want to participate in the loan and they'll want to pay off directly. And although the board hasn't set goals for when people have to make decisions like that, but I suspect it'll be sometime around the point where we go into the permanent loan arrangement with the bank, where they literally say, how much are you really borrowing? The last time I did a project like this, which was up on Peachtree, we had to borrow $5 million to repair a parking deck that had collapsed. And when we got down to the final tally of how much was ended up needed to be borrowed from the bank, it was a lot less because people started making those decisions and they started paying off their component of the project early up front. And then when we created windows for them to also pay out at other intervals, like sale of unit, and also at intervals every year, the debt was retired. The average homeowner association loan like this retires almost fully by 6 to 7 years. And there is just one little inaccuracy in the schedule. The way interest rates are today, a bank will not lend fixed rate for 10 years. The rate is usually a lot higher. It's 5.25% if we're at 10 a year's fixed, and it's 4.5% for the obligation that we're going at after, which is a 1-year construction phase. The rate stays the same for 7 full years. At the end of the 7th year, it adjusts to the current market rate. That's just a little inaccuracy, but if most owners will look at it, we'll see a lot of units that are going to turn over time. I think that once you do get your project done, it will pop your values up. That was the same experience we had at this other property. It really everybody knew the property had a problem with a parking deck. Units weren't selling. Everything was stale. As soon as the project got nearly completed, the units started selling again, and they've had a good rebound on values ever since. So the project will do what it needs to do. It'll help get your values back for you.
Thank you, Tom. If you could pass the microphone to Lanier. Lanier is going to take us through the balloting and the voting process.
Hi, everybody. Again, my name's Lanier Coulter. I recognize probably 90+% of your faces from previous meetings that we've all had about this, so I will go through it relatively quickly. Under Article 3, Section 16 of your bylaws, it contemplates the association needing to borrow money. What it states in there is that it requires a majority of the members to authorize the board to borrow money. So, what does that mean? That means 50% plus one must vote for the board to be authorized to borrow this money in order for it to pass. That is tied to eligible voters under your definition of majority. So if you aren't current, you already don't get to play. If you are current, you get to vote. One thing I just want to touch on is that it's also anticipated that the borrow authority to the board will be to borrow up to $2.4 million. I want to make sure everybody understands why that is. We always like to authorize the board to borrow more than enough, just in case. The board has no intention, I'm sure I can speak for everyone on this board, if they can get away with a lot less than 2.29, they would be ecstatic. So they certainly have the best interest of everyone at heart. They don't want to borrow any more than they have to, but because we get one shot to put this out for a vote, it will say it's up to $2.4 million that you're authorizing the board to borrow. Now, it will be done through what's called a written ballot format. You will receive in the mail a written ballot. It will have with it the tally sheet that you're going to get tonight, as far as, and I say tally sheet, the breakdown, the spreadsheet of how this will play out in each stack. It will be a part of that so that you can clearly see and understand how much the increase will be. If you vote for it or against it, we want your vote. We need to be able to track everybody that votes, because there will be certainly an effort to make sure everyone gets to vote. You'll be able to return it. We're going to work as hard as we can to make it as easy as possible. You can drop it off with Amy. You can fax it to Amy. You can scan and email it to Amy. The critical thing in my world is I need a document with your signature. So you can't email Amy in your own email address and say, hey, Amy, I vote for or I vote against. I want you to scan the ballot in and attach it to that email. So thank you. That's all I have. Yeah, so just to hit that point home again that Rebecca wants me to say, a no vote is just that. If you fail to turn in a vote, that is a no vote. We need the approval of a majority to pass it. So if you don't turn in a vote, that is effectively a no vote on this proposal.
One other thing that I'd like to mention is that these lending institutions will also look at the percentage of majority that we have. The 50% plus one might be looked upon as that everybody was not behind this. So hopefully everything that we're presenting to you tonight will help you make a yes vote. We are going to pass out the spreadsheets now, and we'll give everybody kind of a few moments to look that over, and then Buddy will begin an explanation. I'm sure this is going to bring up many, many, many questions, and but before we do that, I would just like to say that we hope that we have not given you too much information to deal with. We are having this videoed, and that will be up on YouTube hopefully by about the middle of next week. There will also be a voice recording, and our videographer at the back here, Chad Curtis, has very kindly set us up with all this equipment and done a sterling job, I might add. So if you need your birthday party videoed, please stop by and get a business card. We've all worked really hard to present all this information, and I just want to make something really clear. We are affected by this just as much as all of you. You know, we live here, we're residents. You know, it's not that this is all happening to you, but not to us. We're all in this together. I think we're just about there with the distribution. And again, Terry's going to be our facilitator for the question and answer, ably assisted by Judy. And we will not be answering questions about the lawsuit.
Buddy is going to do a brief explanation of the spreadsheet you just got. So we're going to hold questions. He's going to do an explanation of that. Then I'm going to go through the questions that were emailed to us that haven't been answered already. And then we'll start the raising hands and stuff like that. Okay? Thank you, buddy.
Okay, so this is part of our spreadsheet here. We're not showing. There's the numbers up here which shows the loan amount and the monthly amount that we have to pay. But this is the critical information. This is what we call the stack. So I'm assuming, does everybody understand what a stack is? So if your unit number is 101, 201, 301, 401, this would be the line that you would be interested in. If it's 113, 213, 313, it would be this line here. So these are the stacks. This is the percentage space that your unit occupies of the entirety of the building, including the common area. So this is a spreadsheet we commonly use to allocate cost among the unit owners. So when there are 6 of these units, they're all the way down to 18, and then from 19 on to 30, there are only 5. So if you take 6 and multiply that times this, and 5 and multiply it times these, and add all those numbers up, you come back to 100%, which means that the entire building has been taken account of. So then going back to the stack 01, this is the prepayment amount that you would be looking at. So if you choose to pay the entirety up front, you would be looking at this figure for payoff, to be done with it, have it out of the way, save the 7.5% a month that you would be paying, or 7.5% a year. So that's the prepayment amount. If you choose to spread it out over time, then you're looking at this amount. So it would be 204. When you multiply the monthly amount times the 9 years, you come up with this number right here. And Tom has reminded us that it's probably going to be a little bit more than that, because in the final couple of years, the interest rate may very well go up, and probably will go up. So this is your savings through prepay. If you go ahead and pay it up front, you would be saving this much money, which would be the 4.5% interest and the 3% delinquency fee that's being tacked on. So that would be your savings for prepay. This is your previous monthly amount, or your current monthly amount. This is what you're currently paying per month for your HOA dues. And when you add this $204.93 to it, this would be the new amount that you would be looking at. So that's essentially how the spreadsheet works. So, I guess take your time and look it over.
For those of you who I've not met, my name's Terry Neiman, and at this time I would like to begin the question and answer process. However, before we do, I want to explain how we're going to function with the Q&A in the group setting. Judy Hutton and I each have a microphone. What we ask, if you have a question, please raise your hand. Judy and I are going to alternate from each side of the room to answer as many questions as we can in the group format. What we also ask, if you could please stand up to ask your question. We are video recording, so we want to ensure that we capture the questions. We also would want to ensure that everyone can hear and see you as you ask your question. Now, what we will do is answer as many questions as we can that time will allow in the group setting. And when we conclude the questions and answers, then the board will remain for individual questions. So at this time, I see a few hands, and so we will begin. Oh, I'm so sorry.
As I said earlier, the first thing we're going to do is answer the questions that were emailed us in advance. We'll go through those, and then we'll start with the hands. We had a lot of questions, no, a lot. We had several questions regarding new carpeting. We are not including this in the loan. We have $328,000 in our reserves that we plan on using to replace the carpet. Another question was a request to allow more homeowners to rent. We are not considering that at this time. Will insulation be replaced? If we find missing or damaged insulation, it will be replaced. Will the owner of the retail space be expected to contribute? Yes. Does CMA charge a fee for managing the project? Well, CMA is not managing the project. CMA is assisting us in getting financing, and they receive an hourly fee for this. Will the money approved for repair go into a separate fund? No. Got so quiet. What guarantees will we have with regards to timeline and cost overruns by the contractor? Timeline in our contract with the contractor shows that they will pay $600 per day if they do not meet their timeline. Any cost overrun will have to be approved by WJE and then by the board. In other words, WJE will look at the situation, tell us yes, it's a cost overrun, and then we will vote on it. We also have that $250,000 contingency built into the loan that is there for a cost overrun. We don't expect it, but that's what it's there for. What warranties will we have in case future work is necessary? I'm going to let Lee handle this one.
Our goal here is to where we're never back in this situation again for the main thing. But our goal here is we don't want to be back here several years down the road. So the way the guarantee is. The contractor, there is a warranty. There is the contract documents require a minimum of a 2-year labor warranty. So anything that happens or fails, sealants fail or something occurs in 2 years, labor-wise, the contractor will come back and deal with it. A lot of new construction is less than that. We like to go 2 years because we feel if there's an issue, you're going to know it before 2 years. And then you also have the material warranties as well. Now, on top of that, I don't want to deal with warranties. When this job is done, we want to finish it. We want to walk away. We want everybody to be happy. Our goal is we're going to be out here. The board has asked. They've asked us to be on site a lot to make sure it's installed and things are done correctly. We're going to water test the building before they put the stucco up to make sure it is watertight. Again, if the stucco is problematic, we'll know it before they put a coating on it, before they move the scaffold somewhere else. So the question is, what are we going to do to ensure, we're just going to be out there observing and, controlling pay applications, that kind of things, to where, they're not going to get paid until they fix, do it right, and they're not going to move from one place to the other until the work is complete.
It kind of brings us to the next question, Lee. Please describe the process that will be used to ensure releases of payments are not made until certain stages are complete to our satisfaction.
Assuming this goes forward, the contractor within a certain amount, I think 10 days or 15 days after getting the notice proceed, they're going to submit to us a schedule of values. What a schedule of values is it's going to be a breakdown as to how much their scaffolding costs, how much it costs for them to remove the stucco, how much does the new DENS glass or new exterior sheathing cost, how much to do the concrete repairs. Everything's going to be broken down in line items of what the scope of work requires. On a monthly basis, they will submit to us a pay application. We'll be out here quite a bit, so we're going to know if they've done the work or not. But we're going to review it. If it's wrong, we'll talk to them and tell them they'll lower it or raise it or whatever. But they're going to get paid for what they've done every month. And once we review it, sign off on it, we'll sign saying the work is complete, is in accordance with the contract documents. Then we'll issue it to the board for payment.
Thank you, Lee. Wow. Since the interior damage of units occurred due to deficiencies of the exterior, should not the structure insurance account for the interior repairs? And Mr. Lanier, if you could handle that.
Unfortunately, my answer to this is the same as it was back many years ago when we talked about filing insurance for the damage to the building. Your insurance does not cover construction defect. No insurance that I'm aware of for a condominium covers construction defect. Everything that has occurred is a result of defects and or maintenance issues with the building. There is no insurance for us to cover this, unfortunately. So that brings us to where we are.
Thank you. Okay. We are ready for the floor questions.
We have a question back here.
First, I just want to say I'm very impressed with all the work you've done. I think y'all deserve a round of applause, and I hope that people like it.
Thank you.
Quick question. So I know part of the HOA increase over the last couple of years has gone to cover legal fees and whatnot. If we do pay off the amount fully from the get-go, will our HOA fee for that particular unit stay the same?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Question up front.
This is a question maybe for Lee. In the original construction, with as many defects as you've found, should these not have been found by some inspection, county inspections or city inspections? And if they should have been, can we request a different inspector?
Unfortunately, what you guys are experiencing is common all over the place. Construction, it's the city inspectors. I don't know if they're going to catch it. I mean, luckily for me, I would consider myself a stucco expert or a water leakage expert. I'm not a structural steel expert, I'll tell you. I'll find somebody else to do that if we have that kind of problem. But luckily in our firm, each people have their own specialty. A lot of times with architects, and hope if anybody's an architect here, if I say anything, I'm sorry. But you don't know everything. So the contractor, the general contractor, he's responsible for things. He's responsible for hiring proper guys. But yes, things should have been caught. The sad thing is what you've got is going on all over the place. I don't know if that helps you or not, but I mean, I don't think if you have a city inspector, I don't think they're going to catch anything that the other guy didn't catch. I think that's what the board is looking for us to do, is to make sure they don't have those same mistakes. And to give you a little backup with that too is, before they even get started doing any work on the building itself, part of their contract scope is to build a wall. They're going to build a wall out on the parking deck up on where the green coating is. And they're going to put the studs, they're going to put the Dens glass, they're going to put the weather barrier, they're going to go through all the steps. And they can't touch the building until they get it right on that facade first. So everything from screw holes to flashings to tying lath together to putting the stucco. And then once the stucco is installed, we're going to take a sample of that, send it to one of our labs, and let somebody look at it under a microscope to make sure that it's good quality stucco. And then once we know that stucco mix, that's the stucco mix we'll keep throughout the project. So, and then the one thing that the mock-up won't show is how to remove the Dens glass. So that will be demonstrated on the building as they do that. But so our intent is they better know what they're doing before they leave that mock-up. If they don't, they'll keep constructing the mock-up. So that would be the goal,
Kevin,
Remind them to say their name and unit when they get up, please.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear? Is this microphone working?
Yes.
Thank you. We have a question back here.
Hi, I'm Holly Williams, Unit 626. I have two really fast questions. One, are we allowed to vote tonight since we're here?
Lanier?
No, sorry. I usually project without a microphone. Unfortunately, we will not be voting tonight. And I say unfortunately, the point of tonight was to relay all the information and then submit the ballot out so that we could obtain as many votes as possible from owners over a period of time. There will actually be probably a 3-week window for people to cast their vote as outlined in the written ballot. So it was not called as a special meeting to vote. So the short answer to your question is we cannot vote since it wasn't called for the express purpose of voting tonight.
Okay, and the second question was, are there electronic copies of the documents from that could be shared? Okay.
Yes.
There was a question down here in front.
Hi, Frank Derrickson. I know that some of the other buildings, for example, the one across the street from us, I guess that's the Town Square and the Artisan, have had problems with their stucco. What kind of fixes have they adopted?
I do not know about the Artisan. Town Square had what I was told was minor problems, and they have done elastomeric coating. I understand they still have problems, but as we said earlier, elastomeric coating is just not for this building. We have way too many major problems. Thank
Kevin, we have a question back here, please.
Does WJE have any testimonials, pro or con, about the work they have done around here?
Yes, you can find tons of information, testimonials about WJE online. If you would like to see other stuff, we have it also. WJE is considered to be one of the top engineering firms in the country, not just in the area, in the country.
I'm Greta Reed. I'm in 219. My question is, what do we expect the lifespan of these repairs to be?
The lifespan, I've been told, of a correctly installed stucco system can be forever, or 50 years, whatever comes first. The story they tell us is you can go to Europe and find stucco buildings that are thousands of years old. But it's different, yes, which is why the 50 years come in. I think that's a good enough answer. It's supposed to last a long, long time when it's done right, which it will be.
406, I'm here for Dusty Avent. My question is on maintenance. Are we going to be provided with a maintenance plan for long-term applications?
Maintenance of the, yes. I don't recall anybody mentioning lack of maintenance. The question is there going to be long-term maintenance plans? I guess the quick answer is yes.
The parking deck is what I was primarily referring to when you talked about the sealant and it had not been maintained. I believe that was used.
No, the sealant was improperly installed. It wasn't done right.
But there was a maintenance discussion.
Okay.
So who could address that?
The answer is yes, there will be a maintenance plan. We will have a reserve study done, which is something that we've got to do at some point. And the reserve study tells us what needs to be done at what point, so we need to have the reserve cash that we have in order to meet the things in the reserve study. That's a kind of a weak answer for a reserve study. A reserve study tells you when you need to put the new roof in, when you need to change the carpets, when you need to do the walls. As far as anything particular on the maintenance in the garage, I would think it might be Lee.
One thing, what we typically do on projects when we close a project out, one thing that's going to happen is the contractor is going to submit to us all the warranties. They're going to submit the warranties for their labor. They're going to submit the warranties for the material. The sealant warranty that we're installing, the sealant that you guys had originally was a urethane sealant. It was installed incorrectly. It didn't have a shot to begin with. So what we're doing, the sealants we're going to be using, just for an example, is silicone sealants. It's a 10-year warranty. I'm working on Grady Hospital right now. That sealant's been out there on the new granite. That sealant's been out there for 20 years and it looks great. We're doing some spot fixing here or there. So sealants, if it's installed correctly, and we're going to be, that's what these guys, that's what they do for a living. They specialize in this weather, waterproofing and stuff like that. But we're going to be checking and make sure it's done right. So while the warranty may end for the material after 10 years, we're going to be projecting out when you need to replace sealants 20 years, 25 years out, something like that. Coatings, you'll have to repaint the building every now and then, or just, if you want to make it for aesthetics. So there is some maintenance that's going to have to be done. But we will have a table when we get the warranties, make a spreadsheet out of how to maintain and when you maintain the building. We also will give some little documents showing, what you should do, like on a parking garage on a weekly basis or monthly basis. You ought to walk around, just clean out drains.
You have a detailed
yes.
monthly, annual, and long-term maintenance.
Yes, ma'am. And that's pretty customary to do when you finish out a project.
Well, it's very obvious. I should have handed it to him right away, isn't it? I apologize for that. Thank you, Lee.
Yes, Carl Holliday, 611. How many units are there, and how many votes will be needed to pass?
Well, we have 168, so we need 85. Okay.
Hi, Susan in Unit 216. I have a question. My window looks like the ones you showed, except that's the top and the bottom of my windows. And in the repairs that you're going to be doing, is that going to be fixed, or is that going to be my responsibility, especially since my windowsill is beginning to fall off?
It's inside your unit is what you're talking about?
Yes, because
Yes.
the water has leaked.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and
the inside
rotted out.
of the unit is our responsibility, the homeowners. Anything from the window in and from the wall in is our responsibility,
Okay, even though the window in the living room is in there crooked?
even though.
Okay.
We have a question right here. My name is Maria Delasite, Unit 409. My question also is about the windows. The windows, when it rains, water blows in, goes into some weird holes on the side that I've never seen in windows before, and creates problems all its own inside. My question is, it's not going to be covered. Will there be like a window company that people will have the option to replace the windows at the time that the repairs are going to be done? Because we would definitely, at some point we're going to definitely replace these windows because, like I said, they pose problems of all their own. We had a few months after we closed on the unit, they came in, they put a couple of bolts, a couple of nuts on each window to help when it rains and water comes in. The nuts were put to hold up the screen so that the water had a way of, I guess, going out. And in our instance, it just went into the holes that are on the sides of this window. So to me, I think it's a disservice to do all this work and not replace all the windows. But, I don't know if everybody will want to pay to replace their windows at the same time. But I think it's something that you really need to look at because
We've done a lot of talking about windows. What we've found, and the entire building, the percentage of windows that have a problem is very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
The problems around the windows, which is where most people have water coming in, is because of the poor flashing around the window. So there's nothing wrong with a large majority of the windows in the building. You sound like you have a window with a problem, though.
Well, I have a picture of it I can show you.
Do you have anything to tell them on what might be wrong with her window? Yeah, without looking at it, we wouldn't know.
These are the nuts that were put in our window. They're rusted on the side.
Well, we're kind of getting into an individual problem.
Well, I don't think it's an individual problem because I think these windows all have these holes on either side, and when the water comes in, the water goes down these holes, and then there's nowhere for this water to escape. So unless, with this new stuccoing, you're going to create an area for this water to escape, because this is what a real window should look like is, normal windows don't have this hole on either side where the water goes down. And I think all the windows in all the buildings I think it's all those windows.
I do know through our investigation that was performed back in 09 2010, there were, you know, when a lot of times when contractors or when people try to solve problems, they're going to try to solve it the cheap way. So one of the cheap ways they did was putting all these screws in and trying to do things. From our investigation, the windows, the only time we could get a window to leak if the window was crooked. As long as the window was installed plumb, we couldn't get water to leak. At least that's one of the ones we tested.
Okay. Can
Now,
you tell me where the water that comes in and goes down these holes on either side of each window
yes, ma'am.
goes out?
If you look on the out front, there should be weeps there to where that water comes out. All this is all welded construction, so it should work. So that's water's supposed to go in that hole, and then it goes down. There should be little open holes out front.
Well, ours weeped all over the windowsill and down the wall, and we had the paint was bubbling and water was coming.
And some that we found was that way, especially if they were crooked, because the window's supposed to be installed plumb. But with some places it was installed in a way. But I think the way we talked to the board was if a homeowner, since the windows are the homeowner responsibility, if the homeowner, maybe that's something we need to talk further, but if the homeowner wanted to replace the window, now's obviously the time to do it.
Okay, so will there be a contracting company that'll be specifically...
If we were to install the windows, we know what types of windows they are, so we could get something very similar or match existing. But the contractor would do that on a case-by-case basis, if that's what the board decided to do.
Okay.
But
We've got a question back here.
You guys can keep these if you want.
okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Wise in 501. And I was wondering, Lee, when you talked about the 2-year warranty, I assumed that applied for United Restoration. And I was wondering, is there any type of contractual liability that WJE has in this oversight role you'll be playing?
Just so we're clear, warranties, all those things will exist. We are the contracting party in this. That was drastically different than what you bought a unit that a developer built. We have, under the law, what's called privity of contract. We're entering the contract. That statute of limitations for a written contract is 6 years. I hate talking about this in front of the contractor and the engineer, but we have 6 years to sue them if they breach the contract.
We're aware.
Yeah.
And part of that process too is, I mean, Wisjani, we've been around for 56 years. We're not going to go out of business next year. We're going to be around for a while. At least I hope we are. As well as a contractor, they've been around. They're bonded. So even if something happened to where they went out of business 2 years from now, they still there's a bonding company there to have things. So like I said, my goal is with the amount of observations that I'm getting involved in and designing. If there's an issue, I'm sure I'm dragged in it too. So we better do our job. So that's our goal. It's not to be in here for, again, down the road, doing the same type of problems.
Right here, Kevin.
Jared Gossett, 514. So, Buddy, this question's for you because you showed the slide that had that 708% return on investment, so to speak. Right. So I'm a little skeptical, I guess, about that. I mean, you have no idea how long it's going to take, and to imply that that's going to happen, say, in 1 year, that would imply that you know something that the market doesn't.
Well, that didn't it didn't say 708% annual return. If it takes 3 years, it's still a total of 708%. If you break it down to an annual return, it's a third of that. If it takes 3 years.
I think you need to look back at the charts we showed that the other condominiums are all getting back to their baseline, which means they haven't lost any money if they go back to 2005 to now. And we have not. We are way down below all those. And the only reason is we have a faulty building. The people know about it. I mean, I have a family member who came and looked at Unit 312. They talked to me about the construction, about the voting. I told them when we're going to have it. They said, there's no chance it's going to get voted down. I said, well, I can't say that. I don't think so. He says, well, let me know. If it gets voted down, I'm not buying. And this is happening probably over and over in our building. Yeah, so, you know, we do believe, probably not the first year because the construction will be taking place, but we do believe that very shortly thereafter, the Decatur Renaissance will bounce right back up to where it's a baseline with all the other condominiums in our community. We do believe that, and we have no reason to think otherwise.
We have a question here.
Dan Miller, Unit 320. I have two very separate questions. First one is, what happens if the vote does not go through this time, as far as you know, what the options are? And then the second one is, because so many things have not been done right with the construction, I'm curious what else could be wrong inside the building. I know that's investigation wasn't done for this part. This is just the exterior. But is that something that you're concerned about?
Well, not really, no, because we're going from the outside all the way into your wall, and the only things that are inside that are, you know, your electrical stuff. We have no reason to think that we have any electrical problems. Your plumbing, and we don't really have any plumbing problems. They would have shown up already. So, yeah, we don't think there's anything else. We know there's nothing else on the outside, but we don't think there's anything else on the inside. Your first question, if it doesn't pass, we don't have another plan. This is the only plan to fix the building. There is no other way to fix the building other than paying for it. We can't fix it any other way.
Right here, Kevin.
Becky O'Connor, I'm in 627. Referring to these spreadsheet numbers, on, for example, the new monthly figure, that's not necessarily a fixed maximum number. In other words, we're still subject to special assessments or whatever. There's no guarantee that that's going to, for 9 years, that's going to be a fixed amount.
There's no way anybody could say there's a guarantee on that, no. Yeah, we don't see anything in the near future, certainly, not in the next X amount of years. Our roof is in good shape. We're still under warranty. We have enough money to fix the mess that we have inside on the carpets and do the painting.
But there's no stipulation that that's going to be a maximum. There not going to be any further raises.
There's no way anybody could stipulate that. Okay. I'm sorry.
All right. One other quick question. The parking deck, my understanding is we don't own that.
That's correct.
We just rent that.
That is correct.
So we're going to be making repairs to something we don't own.
That is correct. Let me give you a quick explanation of the parking deck situation. Before they put the building on top of the parking deck, they had to make changes to the parking deck so it could hold the building. Any changes that were made to the parking deck, we are responsible for. All of the things that Lee showed you on the slides are changes that were made to the parking deck. That's why we have to pay to fix those. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
Kevin, we have a question here.
Hi, Tommy from Unit 222. I have two quick questions. One, if I choose the monthly payment and then I sell my unit, am I liable to settle that at closing, or is that something that the buyer would take care of?
Great question. You're not liable to take care of that. When they send the payoff request, they're going to say, what's the monthly assessment? And whatever that monthly assessment is for your unit will be provided. The buyer will be fully aware that's the monthly assessment for your unit. As an incentive, sometimes to help people sell after something like this occurs, one of the options is for you to pay it so that your buyer then goes back down to your pre-loan amount. But you are not obligated to pay that. And another big reason, even though we haven't talked about this, that it's set up this way, in the event there's a foreclosure the bank is liable for that monthly amount going forward, as opposed to a special assessment type scenario where it would be gone forever and the bank wouldn't be liable. So you're not obligated to pay it just because you sell your unit.
It's negotiable.
It's negotiable.
Okay, my second question, you mentioned the retail spaces below our building are liable for their portions. When is that included in this, or will that be reassessed and these payments might be lowered because of that?
It's not in that, no. This is just the units here, and it will not change. It will not be reassessed, I guess is the question.
Kevin?
Yes.
I have a question. To go to what Becky asked, and that is if this is only our increase in our condo fees for this particular aspect of the fees is only for 9 years. So, well, that part of it will go away then. Is that not correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah. So you're not going to be paying, if you're here for the next 20 or 30 years, you're not going to be paying it for 20 or 30 years. You're only going to be paying it for 9 years.
Just to wrap up your question, because I know you didn't feel like you got a full answer on that. The $100,000 contribution from the Master Association is their contribution to address their portion of this problem. The setup with the commercial units is a little different under the cost share agreement. There were a couple of ways that it could have been done. They could have had a similar scenario as all of you, or we're getting $100,000. They're also, it's a totally different, under the master document, it's a totally different setup than the residential. The $100,000 is...
We already have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a question here.
Joan Blake, Unit 203. I have a question about marketability, the study that you did with Property Value Services. When they did that study, did they take into account whether those other condominiums were FHA approved and also what their HOA fees were? Because marketability, that is a huge thing as far as selling a home, selling a condo. If you're not FHA approved, a lot of people can't get a mortgage then. And then also when people are looking at homes, they're also looking at the HOA fees. And so was that part of that study when they did that to see that those homes were, those condominiums were selling better than us?
No, that wasn't part of the study. All they looked at was strictly how many units had been sold and at what price. As far as the competitiveness of HOA fees, I don't know, Amy, you might have some numbers. Do you?
I don't think the other condos are FHA approved. They're not FHA approved either?
No, Artisan or 335, and the other one was Town Square. No, none of those are FHA approved.
Will any of the work that we're doing finally get us to an FHA approval? Is CMA planning to fill out the documents to get us FHA approval?
We would only do that if the board requested us to do that. There's a lot of debate about whether you want to be FHA approved for an association.
Sounds like we would have to look further into that.
Okay, and then one last question. If you are marketing your home to sell your unit, what would you put down as your HOA fee? Would you put down the base and then indicate in special remarks that there is a 9-year assessment in addition to that base fee?
When we prepare your dues in 2014, your dues will be presented as two components. One of which would be your operating fee to run the association, the same sort of fee you currently have, and this other fee that's attached to your account to take care of the loan obligation to retire this capital improvement project is what we're working on. So then if you had a closing request on your unit, you would have the opportunity to retire the remaining amount of the capital, get this word correct, this capital project that we're working on. You would get an opportunity to retire that at that point in time or present it as part of your negotiations with the purchaser on how to handle that in your purchase price. I do know that once you're going to have a situation in the building where you have a unit at one fee and a same type unit at another fee, and I know, and you all probably know, that because the unit has a lower fee, it will drive a higher price on value. And so that's why I think a lot of owners, when they get around to the point in time, they'll say, well, I need to go ahead and retire this debt and get it off the books if I'm going to sell my unit. It's another reason why these loans don't last much longer than 6 to 7 years, because they will turn in time. So we know that that's going to happen. That's why it's structured that way.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anybody that hasn't had an opportunity to get one of their questions answered?
I think this gentleman here has not had an opportunity.
Oh, here. Sorry.
On the issue of the total cost, is this considered a special assessment that is then will be distributed over a period of time, or is this something that is added to your basis, or how is it handled from that assessment?
This is not a special assessment. In no shape, form, or fashion is this a special assessment. Just so we're all clear, you're authorizing the board to borrow up to $2.4 million. The allocation breakdown on that spreadsheet is to show you what the impact would be on your monthly assessments, assuming they stay the same. And because the board has, over time, had a lot of inquiries about, could I opt to prepay it at some benefit? Yes, you could. Then the association wouldn't have to borrow as much, so a portion of the interest would go away and everything else, versus the 9 years. So it is strictly, if you vote for this, just so we're all clear, this will be clear on the ballot, it will result in the board being authorized to borrow up to $2.4 million, as well as you are essentially voting for the 2014 budget and thereafter to increase with a debt repayment line item, because we have no choice but to pay the borrowed money back.
If I were to, say, pay this off up front, is this then a loan that I'm taking out individually or not?
It's up to you, actually, and we haven't talked about it. If you're in a fortunate enough position where you can go get a line of equity against your unit, you may actually be able to write this off as an interest deduction. Everyone doesn't have enough equity in their unit to go do that. That's an individual decision. When we talk about, hey, prepaying, you may be in a totally different scenario. You may be able to walk into your current lender and say, I need a $20,000 line of equity as a second, essentially, against my unit, and I'm going to take the interest deduction because I can. So it's not really a loan to the association. You're paying less because you're paying it up front.
We get this question quite frequently when we have projects like this going on. Am I able to deduct this on my tax return? What is this really? The loan is from the bank to the association. It is not a loan from the bank to you personally. Your obligation under the way these things work is it's being allocated, the money that we're having to borrow is being allocated to you as basically as a component of your annual dues for the next 9 to 10 years, okay, over the time period. There's a 1-year construction period and a 9-year payback. And so it's just being allocated to you, so it's not a loan to you. So if you have a question regarding that, you really need to talk to whoever's doing your tax return and let them help you make that decision on how to deduct it on your tax return. Because we're not in a position to, there's 60 people out here, everybody's got a different situation. There's no way I could possibly know what to tell you to do. But we do have people who have rental units. They probably can do a tax deduction, maybe not. I really don't know. Depends on their position in their unit. So is that clear? Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm Howard Hicks from 605. I didn't understand when I bought my unit that I didn't own the ground underneath it, i.e. the parking lot. I found that out later on and was quite shocked by that fact. But now it just has occurred to me while we've been thinking about this over the last month, if we don't approve this, then as I understand it, then the rate of repair is going to only go up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if we don't approve it now, we're going to have to improve something more substantial in the future, which we won't do. If we don't do that, then it seems perhaps that we would be condemned somewhere in the future? Would it also be possible that we would be responsible for demolition in the future? Where am I wrong here? I'm talking to the lawyer up here.
This is America. Anything's possible.
So, and in addition to that, would we not owe the owner of that parking lot for his lost revenues? So, it sounds like a no-brainer. We don't have much choice.
We agree. Thank you, Howard. Any?
I actually don't own a unit, but I would like to own a unit in the condominium, and I think it would be very smart to go ahead and pass this because it's a great location. I've been looking around for 3 years. I've wanted to live in a place where I can walk to restaurants and places, and Decatur is my pick as far as being safe, and the extra $200 did not matter to me when it came, down to location.
Well, we'd be happy to have you as a neighbor.
Oh.
I may not need the mic.
Okay.
I talk pretty loud.
Wait a minute. We need it for the recording.
You need it for that?
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
I was going to make a couple comments, and then I got a question regarding payments. Number one, as far as... Oh, Matt Binky, Unit 520. I don't live here, but my son does. And anyways, I've owned the condo since it was new. But anyways, to me, this whole repair thing is like having to replace the shingles on my house. And so that's how I'm looking. That's the only way I can stomach it, is to say I'm going to pay $10,000 and have the exterior of my condo fixed. And I can stomach that. As far as future litigation, the only one that won, and we shouldn't say this in front of the attorney, is the attorneys. So
I wasn't the attorney for that, though, so don't shoot me in the parking lot tonight.
I know. My question now is, on the $10,000 or whatever that I'm going to owe, if I pay that and it's less, do I get a rebate in the future? Or if I pay that, do I pay it in payments as they make the construction loan?
Well, the answer to the second part is no. You would do, before we start the HOA fees, we're going to come back to everybody and tell them, if you have decided to make a payment in full, you need to make it by this date. Now, if at the end of the construction time we wind up not borrowing as much and that number goes down, yes, you would get a refund. Okay.
We have a question over here, but I also would like to remind everyone that we have approximately 5 minutes left in the room. We can entertain several more questions in the group format, and also want to let everyone know that if you do have any individual questions after this evening, or even this evening when we conclude, the board will be available to entertain those individual questions. And we have one more question over here.
Amy Wise again. Given the fact that there are a number of people who are already unable or not paying their current condo fees, and you allotted, I guess, 3% for that as an ongoing process, I'm just wondering what kind of conversation the board had about that issue, about as we move into this, how will the board be dealing with people who are unwilling or unable to make the increased HOA payments?
Our procedures are the same. Your HOA payments, if you don't pay now, we have procedures that we follow right up to handing it over to Lanier. That's going to be the same. How we came up with the 3%, we went back and looked at last year and our delinquency rate. Now, we're not talking about people, we're talking about dollars. And the delinquency rate last year was 1%. And we talked to Tom, and we had some discussions about it, and he mentioned 2, and then we mentioned 3, and we decided on 3 because the last thing we want to do is not have enough to cover it. So that's the process we use to come up with the 3%. If somebody doesn't pay, it's going to be handled the same way as if somebody didn't pay 2 years ago. There's a process in place that we follow religiously.
Gabrielle Guyton Edmiston, Unit 103. Kind of going back to, I think the window lady left. Those of us with interior things that need repaired that we're not going to do until the exterior is repaired, I'm just wondering if you guys can, with the help of WJ and whoever else, come up with a list of preferred workers, contractors, to do the interior work for us, so that those of us that have work that needs to be done inside, once the outside is fixed, we have good recommendations and can avoid further problems.
I think we could do that. Yeah, we have some people already that Amy has who have done contracting work in the building, and she gives them out. But yeah, we can get information, maybe from you guys and maybe from Lee, and we'll get a list together. I think that's a good idea. Thank you. And thank you all so much for coming, and have a great night.